What is going on, Swoopers? Welcome back to another episode of Swoop Luke. In this episode, we'll be previewing this a huge game against Melbourne. It's pretty much an 8-point game. We lose, we're 8th, 9th, 10th. We win, we get a jump on the Giants, we get a jump on Melbourne. So let's run the intro and jump straight into it. Just before we do jump straight into it, as always, be sure to follow me on Twitch. I'll be streaming this weekend. Got a nice couple of streams coming up, couple of surprises. Also on my Instagram, which is Swoop Luke, on my Twitter, which is Swoop Luke, and TikTok, which is, you guessed it, Swoop Luke. So follow me there. And if you are a new swooper, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell for notifications when I upload these videos. And if you're a returning swooper, thank you so much. A couple of extra double shackers to you. So let's jump into this preview now. So going into this game, Melbourne haven't been setting the world or the AFL world on fire. They sit 10th, 5 wins, 5 losses. Their last 2 wins came against the 18th place Adelaide Crows and, the bottom 4 North Melbourne. And it only really took them till the second half to beat the Roos. But then again, it only took us to the second half to beat the Crows, so you can't really go off that. But what you can go off is that they've won their last 2 games. Their 2 games previous to that, which was Port Adelaide and Brisbane, they lost them both. But in saying that, they did just lose to Brisbane by 4 or so points, but they did get smashed by Port. So kind of like us, bit of a roller coaster. But what you do notice is that when they're winning, they're kicking a really big score. They've hit over 80 points in their last 2 games. Their game against Hawthorn that they won 5 rounds ago was another big over 80 points kicked win, not an 80-point win. It was 48 to 91, but a big score that they've generated. So they can find the scoreboard when they're allowed to. The games that they did lose, which was against Port Adelaide and the Brisbane Lions, they kicked under 50 points. Port Adelaide kept them to 32, Lions kept them to 49. So when they're getting strangled in the defense, they're not kicking a lot of goals. But when they're allowed to free roam, they can put on a big margin, a big winning margin, and they can kick a goal and a half. Us, on the other hand, sitting 7th, 6 wins, 1 draw, 4 losses. Our last 2 wins came against, Adelaide, Sydney. Adelaide game, you've seen my preview, you watched the game. First half, absolutely atrocious. Second half, that was the Collingwood that we love to see and we want to see more of. The Sydney game, we waited till the last sort of quarter, last sort of half, till we ran over the top, lost to Fremantle, got smashed by West Coast, and then we beat Geelong in that premiership favourite sort of game, which seems so long ago. So as you can see as well, we haven't been setting the world on fire, especially against Adelaide. Tale of 2 halves, I said it in my review video. 2 different sort of Collingwoods coming out of that team. So it'll be a very good matchup going into this game. So the last time we versed the Demons was last year in round 21. It was those patches of 4 games that really boosted us into that top 4. Had to win those last few games. Melbourne did give us a little bit of a scare. We only beat them by 17 points. Treloar gathered over 30 disposals. Checkers was on fire, kicked 4 goals. But like I said, it was a very tug-of-war sort of game. Right until the end, we got over 20, 30 points in front. They kicked 4 goals in that last quarter to L1. So they did threaten a little bit, but ultimately we ended up winning and we went on to win the next couple of games, hit into that top 4 spot. The teams look very, very different from then to now, and we know that as much as you want to go on past history, and as much as I like mentioning it, because you do like to see what happened the last time we versed them. In this COVID sort of football fixture, it's not going to really matter. We're coming off a really short turnaround. They're not, but we're coming off a really short turnaround, so you can only look to it for stats and how we matched up against them. So it's going to be a really interesting game. So the key areas and the key matchups. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So Grundy is playing. Cool, don't rest him. You know why? Max Gawn isn't playing. Luke Jackson isn't playing. Braden Preuss, their 3rd ruckman from old mate North Melbourne that they got, is playing. So what does that mean? Grundy is going to hopefully have a field day and play himself into form. His max score is probably top 2 ruckman in the competition. It'll be Nick Nat and Max Gawn for me at the moment. Grundy isn't really setting the world on fire at the moment, but he'll come back in this game. He's going to absolutely obliterate Bruce, and McDonald will give Bruce a chop out as well. But what I'm trying to say is that this is going to be an exercise of, can we use Grundy to the best of his ability now that we're versing a Melbourne side that do have some good midfielders, but not a good ruckman. So, do their midfielders do what the Giants did against us in the prelim and rove to Grundy, and he can have 100 hitouts, but they win the clearances and we don't? Or are we smarter than that and we know what they're going to do, so we counter their sort of counter? So you got to do the counter, double counter. Is that what's going to happen? I just think that not resting Grundy is a good move. He should have a field day, and if he doesn't, he's not going to have a field day probably for the rest of the year if he can't get over McDonald and Bruce. Please. Another interesting matchup is who will be playing on Clayton Oliver and Christian Petrarca. You'd think when Christian Petrarca is resting forward, Maynard will go onto him, and then maybe Crisp goes onto him while he's in the midfield. But Clayton Oliver is another guy that can put damage on the board, and who has in the past put damage on the board for us. He's leading Melbourne in clearances, all those sort of stoppage clearances, disposals and stuff like that. Between Oliver and Petrarca, they're averaging about 25, 26 disposals each, and about 9 clearances a game between them, 350 meters gained each. So if we shut those two guys down, it's going to go a long way to winning that game. Maybe they don't have a significant game because there's no Max Gawn, because there's no Luke Jackson. But, in saying that, they're going to be training with Bruce. They're going to be training with McDonald in the ruck. So they're going to be able to know what's going on. We just can't get damaged by these sort of players. And because we don't have a Greenwood-like tagger, we're not going to play that tagging role. So we do have to keep an eye on him, especially Petrarca, who's having his, one of his best seasons, probably his career best season. So who called him the other day, said he was better than Dustin Martin, which is, not true. But he's pretty good. He's staked his claim as, probably one of the top 10 players in the league at the moment. So he's going to be very dangerous, but I'm going to love seeing Maynard line up on him and butt heads with him. The main key area that we're going to be looking at, which is, a key area that I keep bringing up, and I'll keep bringing up until it's fixed, is can we generate enough points going forward and have that sort of midfield to forward connection that kicks us a winning score against a team that's going to be hitting us hard like Melbourne. Sure, against Adelaide it worked. Against Sydney, it kind of worked. But against a better team, and I rate Melbourne higher than I rate any of those other teams, will it work what we're doing right now? And I sound like a broken record, and I'm so sorry that I do sound like a broken record. But we need that midfield to forward connection, dropping those eyes, hitting. We need to be hitting at least, or converting at least 65% of our inside 50s. I think we're sitting at about 45 at the moment, 45 to 50%. We need to be converting a lot more if we're to be kicking, 70, 80 points a game to get us in a better spot to win games. Our defense can win us games, but you need to kick a winning margin to win games. Football's so simple, and that's exactly what we need to do. Keep it simple. Alright, so hot off the press, we have the ins and outs for tomorrow's huge game against Melbourne. A couple of shock omissions, a couple of injuries. So let's read them out, talk about it. Ins: Jamie Elliott, Will Hoskin-Elliott, Darcy Moore, Scott Pendlebury comes back after those 3 games, without playing because of his quad that he pulled 30 seconds before the West Coast bounce. So it's awesome to see Pendlebury out there. It's going to go a long way in getting that mid-forward connection because he can pinpoint a pass going inside 50. And he's really going to help us score a lot more than we have been. And Ben Reid, which means that we'll be playing Grundy, Ben Reid, and Darcy Cameron in the same side. And Mychek. So we're going to be having a really tall forward line, which gives me nightmares to the prelim. But we're going to be having a really tall forward line. So let's see how it goes. If it doesn't work, it's not going to work. So it's probably a good time to test it now than it ever has been. Coming out, Braden Sire with a quad injury. Apparently he picked up a quad injury in the first quarter of that Adelaide game and played out the rest of the game. But now it's looking like he'll be out from 6 to 8 weeks, which is insane. How do you injure your quad so much in that first quarter, play the rest of the game out, have a good game, and then you're out for 6 to 8 weeks? It's a little bit weird, a little bit, how's it going? But he's not playing tomorrow, obviously. Jordan Roughhead with that concussion is out. 4-day turnaround. History of concussions, you're obviously not going to play him. Tim Broomhead and omission didn't do much, but congrats on that first game back in 2 years. Chris Mayne was the interesting one. They've kept Varco in, but Chris Mayne is out. I think he did enough, but it could be a 4-day turnaround thing. It says omitted, but it could be a rest. Who knows? And the shockiest of shockest omissions is Jaden Stevenson, who has been omitted. Kicked 2 goals, had about 4 or 5 disposals last week. It's shocking because he has a great goal sense. He knows where the goals are, can pick the ball up, kick it at goal. So I don't think it's because of that he's been omitted. It could be because of his work rate, only a handful of disposals. But when you think about it, if you're kicking 2 goals out of 4 disposals, that's a 50% goal kicking rate from your disposals. So that's pretty good. You don't want him to get 25, 30 disposals a game. But there might be things that we can't see that he doesn't do because we're watching it from one angle on the TV. We haven't got that sort of bird's eye view. Maybe he doesn't push back hard enough. Maybe his defensive structure isn't good. But when the coaches are playing him, say, if you can't get the ball, go down to the back pocket and take a mark there. It's a bit dumb. So hopefully this is a bit of a wake-up call. He definitely does need to wake up because we know how good he can be. We've seen 2018, we've seen most of 2019 because of that betting thing. But we know how good he can be. Maybe this is the wake-up call that he needed. So, I do think that we're going to win. We're always a 50% chance to win a game. That's how statistics do work. But I think we're going to beat Melbourne. No Gawn, no Jackson. I keep bringing them up. Not having them and going up against Grundy is going to be too much for the Melbourne midfield. We're going to end up winning by 34 points. It's going to be a nice, comfortable win. And we're going to see, my big call is that we're going to see a Collingwood side that we're actually proud of watching and not that shit house that they put up in that first half against Adelaide. Final thoughts. We need to win this game. Keep our top 8 hopes alive. Keep our top 4 hopes alive. Need to get that clearance between the Giants. Need to get that clearance between Melbourne in those 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th spots because anyone can sneak into the 8. Everyone is just having a weird season. It's topsy-turvy, upside-down land. It's a little bit crazy. COVID's a little bit crazy, but I think if we can just solidify our spot in the top 8, we can win the premiership, no doubt. Any team in the top 8 can win. Okay, sure, having a spot in the top 4 is great, but for anywhere between 1st and 8th, you've got a chance of winning, despite not having that second chance from 5th to 8th. But anyway, guys, that's been enough from me. I'm so keen to view this game. Pendlebury's coming back, and I absolutely love Pendles, and she's going to add so much finesse into that midfield, and it's going to be a pleasure to watch. But I'd love to know your thoughts. As always, leave them down in the comment section below. And until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets. And until next time, double shackers. I'll swoop you later.
Ooh la la.
And the shockiest of shock commissions, 50-50 cent, 50-50, oh my god. That's how oh, fuck me. That's how So let's jump into this review now. Fuck me.